Well, welcome everybody. This is Subscription Insiders Workshop, the journey to subscription excellence. Hello, I am Kathy Greenler-Sexton, and I am the CEO of Subscription Insider, and I am thrilled that you guys are here today with us. The road to scalable growth and success is scaled with actionable strategies that can be applied differently at different stages of business. And today, we're going to be discussing the challenges faced by all subscription businesses in terms of identifying and optimizing what those challenges and opportunities are to scale your business at each stage of business. So with me today is leading subscription strategy expert and author, Robbie Kellman Baxter. Hi, Robbie. Good to see you.
Hey, Kathy. Nice to see you too.
I know. It's so good to get the gang together here. And Nelson Veiga, a leading subscription monetization expert and technology expert from Vindicia. Welcome, Nelson.
Hey, Kathy. Hey, Robbie. It's good to see you both again. And I'm excited about spending some time with you and our audience today.
Yeah, I think I'm so excited for today's discussion because it's so relevant to where the market is and what people are facing today. I'm going to spend a couple minutes just talking about Subscription Insider. For those of you who do not know us, we are a media company really focused on insights for operating and growing your subscription business. We offer a lot of things day in and day out, including workshops like you see today and experiencing today. For those of you who might be looking for a new resource, whether it's consulting, whether it's marketing, legal, M&A, we have a subscription vendor directory that you might be interested in. And I have an example of one of our leading suppliers here in the subscription vendor directory, Vindicia, and they're in the subscription billing, retention, and a number of other categories. So you can see there's a lot of information for you to start your research process and get a lot of great information, so you can then reach out to our partners in the directory. We have some upcoming events, June 2nd, 9th, and 16th. We have our subscription bootcamp program. On the 2nd is subscription bootcamp marketing with 3 experts that are going to walk us through go-to-market, subscription acquisition, optimization, and retention. I'm having trouble speaking today. On the 9th, we're going to be focused on revenue operations, and we're going to walk through recurring revenue operations, payment processing, and we will have a CFO with us that is going to really be walking us through managing teams and resources. And on the 16th, we'll be focused on technology, where we're going to walk through the difference between e-commerce and subscription tech specifically, the payment stack specifically, and then looping in recurring revenue marketing needs that you should be thinking about for your recurring revenue business. And then at the end of June, we have a workshop that has been rescheduled, June 23rd, Mastering the Art of Pricing. So check those out at subscriptioninsider.com events. And this fall, November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, I am hosting a New York live Subscription Show 2021. It's our flagship conference, and we always have some amazing speakers, amazing learning, and amazing networking. So if you want to learn more about that, go to subscriptionshow.com. So as we get going today, feel free to use the chat window to ask any questions. I'm actually going to turn these slides off. We're going to have a conversation. And if you have any questions, just put that right in there and we'll make sure that your voice is heard. So with that, I am going to get the discussion started. I'm going to turn off my share. And Robbie and Nelson, Robbie, why don't you start? Why don't you just introduce yourself and tell everybody about who you are and what you do, although I think most people do know you already.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kathy. And thanks to you for inviting us to join you today for this conversation. It's always fun to see you, and we always have good conversations. So I'm looking forward to it. Robbie Kellman Baxter, I've been focused on the world of subscriptions and membership models for over 20 years. Starting with work I did with Netflix way back when. I wrote the membership economy 7 years ago to explain to people what I was seeing across a really broad range of subscription-based businesses and businesses that have a membership mindset, and to try to convince people to consider this path to building deeper and more valuable relationships with customers. And honestly, in 2015, that was a hard sell. Really that first book was about the why. Why are subscriptions so powerful? 5 years later, I wrote The Forever Transaction. I don't have to explain to anybody anymore why subscriptions are valuable. The challenge now is really getting into the nitty-gritty of how do you actually launch, scale, and maintain a leadership position with your subscription offering in a, noisy and competitive world. So that's where I've been focused for the last 20 years. I'm looking forward to the conversation, and that's me.
Nelson?
That's terrific. By the way, what a privilege it is to share a stage with these two ladies. I mean, Robbie, the very well-known author. I had the opportunity and privilege to work closely with her on a couple of different things, and I've learned immensely. And Kathy, just her seminars are great events. So thank you for allowing me to even join this stage with you two professionals. So me, Nelson Veiga, I have the privilege to run the Americas business for Vindicia. So Vindicia is a leading subscription lifecycle management company, a software company that is maniacally focused on just this business. This is not a sideshow for us. This is our day-to-day purpose to get our customers great value from their investments in us and team with them along their journey in different phases of their evolution. So in my position, I have responsibilities for both sales, but also post-sales. So, and I love that part of the job, because I not only help them discover opportunities to attack business problems or grab business opportunities, but also to help manifest them to reality and be successful along the way. So that's what brings me a lot of joy. And I have the Americas, so which gives me another unique perspective, is that not only do I see companies at different stages, as I think we're going to touch on here in a little bit, I also have the ability to see nuances in different regions of the Americas, North America versus parts of Latin America, which are quite active, by the way, in the subscription world as well, strangely enough. But anyway, so that's my role, and I'm really excited to be here again today.
Well, I'm excited to hear from both of you on this topic. I'd like to kick things off by setting the stage for everybody. The whys and the whats of what we need to keep in mind when you think about business stages and growth, challenges and opportunities. So Robbie, I'm going to ask you to kick things off to kind of set the stage for us on how we should be thinking about things.
Yeah. So I think about, in the general world of subscriptions, I think about 3 phases of maturity. And I think it's very similar to how Vindicia, and how Subscription Insider thinks about it as well. There's a first phase, which is the launch phase. This is where you're trying to get your resources together, trying to really understand what I would call your ideal member, trying to establish a vision, and building a minimum viable product around your promise, your forever promise. You have to have a promise that you're making to your customers that is ongoing, that justifies ongoing payments. So that's that first phase, is just figuring it out until you get to a product market fit. The second phase, which I think is really where we're going to be focusing today, is the scale phase. So this is when you know you're on to something. You have subscribers. It seems to be working, and you say, this is time to invest for the future. Maybe the beginning was all, chewing gum and paper clips holding everything together. And now you're saying, let's invest in infrastructure. Let's invest in technology. Let's invest in analytics. Let's invest in having the right culture. And then the last phase, which I think people forget about, is when you've been doing subscriptions for a long time. So think about, the newspapers, the gyms, professional associations. A burden comes with all of that success, which is the same members that love you exactly the way you are make it very hard for you to change anything. And you run the risk of losing relevance. Your promise might still be important. So for example, in the world of news, the promise might be to help people understand the world around them. Millennials and Gen Zs also want to understand the world around them. They care a lot about understanding what's happening in the world, but maybe a newspaper isn't the best way for them, in their minds, the best way of delivering on that promise. So the how becomes an issue. So in that lead phase, if you want to maintain a leadership position, you have to keep the touchstone of your promise rather than kind of grabbing onto the product itself. It's not about the newsprint and the ink. It's about the helping your subscribers on their journey to understanding the world around them and making better decisions. So those are the three phases. I think that's a good framework for the conversation today.
I think that is a great framework: launch, scale, and lead. And as we begin to go to this next part of the discussion, are there any key things that we should be thinking differently between the launch, scale, and lead? Is it just exactly what you talked about, or is there anything else we should be keeping in mind?
Well, I think something that's important to keep in mind is the staffing, the kind of people and the kind of metrics that you need at each phase. Often the person running a launch is an entrepreneur. They think outside the box, they break things, they ask for permission after they've done it. They're trying to establish something. They're experimenters, wonderful people, not necessarily always the same people that are good at scaling, at operationalizing. This is where you really need an operator, a manager, somebody who thinks systemically.
Yep.
And then in the lead phase, what often happens there is you have this general manager who has to think of it as a business that is continually changing and staying new. And often it's a new, kind of a person that re-looks at what the offering is. So I think that's an important thing. And then just being really focused on those moments of transition. So often what happens at the end of a phase is, they run through the tape and then they stop. Right? Oh, thank God, I finished. We launched, we've got customers. Let's move on to the next thing. When really, that's when the heavy lifting starts of building out your infrastructure. And then once your infrastructure is there, you go back to the product market fit and say, okay, are we still optimized for today's customers and tomorrow's? Are we still relevant for tomorrow's prospects as well as making today's members happy?
I love that. And I think that's really a good foundation for all of us to really think about. So with all of this in this framework, let's pile on market reality, shall we? We have been living through a pandemic. Some people are thriving. Some people are a little bit more challenged. And Nelson, when we were talking about this, you talked about a self-assessment to help people really understand the here and now of the market and using that.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is I want to quickly share a graphic that illustrates some of the things that Robbie was saying, and then I'll piggyback on top of that, if that's okay, Kathy.
Perfect.
Terrific. Let me go ahead and just share that. I think that this picture will really be helpful. So this actually graphically illustrates some, not all, the points that Robbie was just bringing up. And this actually dovetails to the self-assessment. So as we mentioned here, we're using this as a framework, guys, because here's the thing is that I have the privilege of working with a lot of different customers, and they inevitably fall into these into this framework in these different categories. It's not judgmental, but it always helps to understand where are you in your life cycle, just like as if you were an investor. You do different things in your investment life, depending on where you are in your life cycle and so forth. The same goes with your business. So I think at the self-assessment, the first phase is, I would say, where am I? If I agree that this is a useful and productive framework, I start to assess myself in these areas. And by the way, I do this in my business, even though, I'm arguably in a completely subscription business. I'm in the software as a service business. So I have to not only have launched, have new customers, but continuously maintain them to deliver value to them. But so self-assessment. Number one, framework. I think a framework is very, very useful. And I know that some of my customers are actually on this webinar, at least I think they are, that we actually use this to help them frame where they were. And then from there, you can take actionable steps. So as Robbie was saying, launching, launch, scale, and lead have different high level sort of things. So I think that you have to have a deep understanding of where you are and use a framework such as this to be able to identify where you are. Now, what happens, Kathy, after this, after you do a self-assessment, again, across your product set, your processes, the way you're going to market, as you're looking to scale, do you have the numbers to be able to really understand your business and things of that nature? So these are things that you've got to implement. So let me give you another example. I've engaged a number of prospective customers that have said, I've been up and running for a while. Now I'm going to go get funding, and I'm going to launch myself into a different phase. And we say, yeah, you're scaling. They go, yeah, there you go. I'm actually going to start scaling my business. And they look to me and they go, so what does that mean to you? Well, Robbie touched on some of that, operating systems and business processes, formalizing things, right? Understanding handoffs within the organization. But the number one thing that I keep hearing in scale, once again, that's actionable, is understanding your numbers. If you do an assessment and it's not data driven, you're sort of guessing. So I think being able to look at your numbers, look at your progress, look at where you are versus plan allows you to take action. And I think that we're going to touch on what some of those take action is. So use a framework, self-assess, use others in your organization, even experts to take a look at you, provide opinion, because then you'll walk away with a plan.
I think that's actually really great. There is a question quickly, is there any specific time frame with the different phases and transitions, or is it just when you're ready, you move to the next phase?
Yeah, I would say it's not necessarily time delimited. I've seen organizations fly through the launch phase with incredible intention, especially startups. Getting a product to market in 3 months, let's say, from start, and then getting product market fit right off the bat, and saying, okay, this is growing really fast. We need to start investing in scaling. There's other organizations. I have a couple of clients right now that have had businesses that have been kind of just on autopilot for years, doing well, but nobody's really investing in technology or analytics because the business is kind of doing its own thing. And a lot of businesses will go 20, 30 years before they really recognize that they're in the lead phase and they need to continually iterate. And they kind of get a wake up call, usually when a competitor comes into the market. What I would love to see is for the organizations to kind of use a checklist and say, okay, we have product market fit. We can predict when customers are going to come, and we're getting asked questions that we can't answer because we don't have the right data, or we're not able to do the kind of experiments we want to do because we don't have the right technology. We can't offer the features we want to offer because we lack the right tech stack. That's when we need to move to operate, to kind of the operational scaling phase. And then the same thing, once the point for transitioning from scale to lead is usually right as you finish whatever you think of as that intensive scaling phase, like, thank goodness we have the technology implemented. It seems to be working. And the instinct is, and now let me go work on something else. But really it should be, and now let me go back to the beginning and make sure that, the product market fit is there, that new people are engaging, that the people that are engaged are staying and expanding their relationships. Let me look at where the biggest opportunity is now. I have one client that thinks in terms of seasons. So every 3 to 6 months, they have a different focus, and they're constantly looking at their metrics and saying, where's the greatest opportunity? and everybody focuses on retention for a while. And then they're like, nope, now we're going to move and look at acquisition. Now we're going to move and look at top of the funnel. Now we're going to look at engagement. Now we're going to really dig in on onboarding. And I think that's a good way to go in that lead phase.
Yeah. That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, I would agree with Robbie. I think that to put yourself on a timeline is really not the right way to look at it. I think it's all about end states. What is the outcome that I'm trying to drive? Some people are happy with a business, and their end state is a business that's, $1 million in revenue or 10 million in revenue. It depends on what your desired end state are. If you're in launch phase and you're going, okay, I've arrived, good. Just make sure that everything's going to run efficiently. But if you want to scale, then you've got to take that hard look at, what I need to get to the next phase. So I guess it's really being comfortable with what is my desired outcome and state that I want to achieve to drive you to that next phase.
So I'm curious, specific to making it through to the other side of the pandemic. We're all looking at our businesses. What actionable strategies should we be thinking about to keep customers that we got last year, our pandemic customers? Are they different? Are they the same? How should we be thinking? Robbie?
Yeah, well, the bad news is if you're just starting to think about how to keep the customers that you got last March or April, it may be too late because the most important place to build engagement and loyalty is in that onboarding phase, in the seconds, minutes, and days after somebody signs up with you. That being said, I think the companies that were successful at really spiking in acquisition and engagement at the beginning of the pandemic were the ones that recognized a changing need among their best customers and their ideal members, and then either optimizing the offering, so actually changing their products and services to serve them better, or connecting more aggressively, reaching out and saying, hey, join us, we can help you. This is another pivot moment, right? Things are changing again. The ground is shifting under our feet. So this would be a good time to take a step back and say, what does this mean? If I'm DoorDash, right? And for a year, people couldn't go to restaurants, and we're afraid to leave their homes, right? Now we're not afraid to leave or as afraid to leave our homes, and we're able to go back to restaurants. What should they be doing, right? It's a new environment. How should they be communicating that to their subscribers? And what, if anything, needs to change? I think the really important thing about a subscription in any time, not just in the time of COVID, is you're constantly looking at your members' changing needs and challenges in achieving their goals, and then being willing to optimize your offering to serve them.
Yeah.
Great point.
Let me just piggyback on that. I think that's a great example. That DoorDash is a great one, because you're right. People now do want to go out there, but look, the convenience of a DoorDash now has been established. So good for them. Now, here's what I'm hearing, and I'll share an example. I'll share examples without violating the trust of saying who it is. But one of the things that I could share with you right now, and it's not like some epiphany, but you're going to have a very distracted public now. When they were homebound, they were less distracted. They were home. That there's a monitor in front of them. Everybody was kind of, if they're lucky enough to have multiple rooms in their house, they're even holed up within their own house, kind of, to do their own thing. And they became somewhat altruistic. I could tell you that people started wanting to learn new skills, do, different things that, I have time now because I'm not running around, to airport or all this other stuff because I'm home, right? What used to take me 4 hours now is taking me an hour because I'm not consuming time traveling around. So I think what you're going to encounter now is a distracted consumer, potentially. It's one other dimension on top of what Robbie was saying, right? So again, I can give you another example, but let's just stop there. Now, if we agree on a couple things, people are going to be distracted. People are going to be wanting to do things other than they were doing for the last year. You've got to be able to engage, derive, and do something about it. Right?
I think that's a great point. I think the traveling numbers at the airports underscore your point, Nelson, about everybody's just dying to get out now that they're getting vaccinated and doing things. I'm curious, in our own business, speaking of doing things differently, this past year, many of us have launched new ways of doing things. You talked about that with DoorDash, Robbie. What do we kick to the curb now that we're thinking post-pandemic? What do we keep? How do we think about that? Because everybody's done things just a little bit differently.
Yeah, the last 14 months have been a time for many organizations of tremendous creativity and experimentation. And a lot of organizations have accelerated their subscription journey, their journey to go direct to their customers and kind of bypass their intermediaries, their retailers or their resellers. And also a move towards digital, right? Getting my digital footprint right. And what's happening now is, there's this pull between, do I keep investing in that? Maybe I've implemented, but maybe I'm just in my experimentation phase and I'm just starting to get to product market fit. Do I invest in building the infrastructure to support my nascent subscription business? Or do I go back to doing business the way I always did, whether that was in person or transactional, episodic? Do I go back to the old way? And there's a lot of inertia and a lot of pressure to go back to the old way. So my advice for people that are dealing with this, that are looking at, we can't support all of these different systems, whether it's different revenue streams or different delivery channels for the same value. I think what you need to do is take a step back and say, which of these features and benefits drives acquisition, which are headline benefits? So what are the reasons when you look at people who are joining? Are they saying, I'm joining because you have this digital thing, or you have this subscription as well as your regular restaurant service? Is it an acquisition benefit that you can say new and improved? Or is it a benefit that drives engagement and retention? Is it a benefit? A lot of subscriptions aren't about acquisition at all. They're about engagement and retention and expansion of the relationship. So you want to look at that too. So for each feature, as your team is trying to decide where do we invest going forward, look at the ones that are driving acquisition and the ones that are driving engagement and retention and the ones that would result in you losing customers if you got rid of it. And then choose your top features for future investment. But also don't forget to sunset some of the other features, because if you've been around a long time, the burden of being around a long time is you often end up having like everything in the kitchen sink as features and somebody's using everything, and it becomes really hard to decide what to get rid of. And then your team ends up being spread too thin.
Right. So what else can you add to that? I think you're absolutely right. It's the building blocks, acquisition and retention. Let's focus on retention, because I think a lot of businesses, as you mentioned, Kathy, have not only survived, but some have actually thrived. They've actually done better than probably they would have done without the pandemic, arguably, right? So now, okay, so if you decide, as Robbie said, okay, I have to really take a good hard look at what I'm doing about retention, right? So let me share this insight with you. Retention and really has two major dimensions. There's active and there's passive. So let's start with the easy one, passive. The way you don't want to introduce churn into your business is to make yourself difficult, right? If somebody's paying you on a monthly, quarterly, or annual basis and they have a payment method with you, find ways to be able to take that payment. And if there's a problem with it, that is, if it fails on the initial try, have a technology strategy to minimize the friction to have to call them or some sort of awkward moment, because you may get interrupted by saying, I'm so glad you called because I'm not really using you a whole lot. Let's go ahead and go through a cancellation, right? So eliminate those unforced errors and have a technology that saves your failed credit card transactions. At Vindicia, we offer a very good system for that. Now let's transition to active, because if you see activity or engagement dropping, that's usually a leading indicator that something in the relationship has changed. They're not finding as much value. They're not available as much to use it. So you have to find a way to measure that. That doesn't just happen by happenstance. You have to have technology in place to be able to address that. And also, not only, for those that are heavily engaged, provide them visibility to things that could bring them additional value. Robbie talks about that all the time. Find ways to better serve your customer, right? Or your subscriber. And then secondly, if you see somebody with a declining usage, get out in front of it. Shape the customer journey. If they want to leave, that's fine. But just be able to engage them proactively through also there's technologies to do that through engagement platforms like Redfast do exactly that. So there's, you have a situation, you want to do retention turns into actionable strategies, and then you have a technology stack that can support that.
So have expectations changed? And I'd love us to dive into B2B and B2C separately, because I know in the Zoom we have many different types of companies. How have expectations changed from our customers during the pandemic?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but it's probably mine. Yeah. Robbie, maybe you can kick us off and then I'll jump on that.
Sure. I think expectations have changed, certainly among customers. I think at the beginning of the pandemic, customers were much more forgiving, of much more willing to try new things and much more forgiving of mistakes, right? There was that whole period where, you'd come online for a Zoom call and somebody would be on mute, or you'd come for a conference and you wouldn't be able to get in. And people were understanding. They were understanding of your baby crying in the background. They were willing to let you try. If you were trying to do grocery delivery and you didn't get it on time, they'd say, well, things are crazy. And, the companies, that grocery store, my local grocery store, they're just trying to figure out delivery or curbside or whatever it is. But now they're expecting us to have, figured it out, first of all. And they're less willing to try new things as things are opening up. They're going back to their old ways. And they expect all of the improvements that have been made to stay and all of the old things to open up the way that they were. So I think a lot of us are going to face these huge expectations of customers who I want everything live again, and I want it virtual as well. Right?
Honeymoon's over. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, well, the honeymoon's over. Absolutely. And people want, we bent over backwards to, be really agile and come up with new features and benefits. And now they're going to expect that. This is the new normal. We expect every organization to be able to do a digital event, a digital meeting, use Mural or Miro to do a brainstorming session remotely. That's just the new normal. We expect everybody to be able to deliver to our homes. We expect everything to be delivered overnight or, in a couple of hours. And so, the baseline is higher now. And so, we're all being held, I think, to a higher standard around, our digital, our ability to connect directly with the users, and the ability to provide relevant value in exchange for the subscription loyalty.
So from a mindset and staffing standpoint, Robbie, and then I want to ask you on the tech stack, Nelson, from a mindset, how do we need to think with this higher expectation?
Yeah, I think, we talk a lot about a member mindset, a membership mindset. And, that means it doesn't matter if you call your customers members or users or listeners or readers or whatever you call them, publicly, but internally treating your customers like members requires a different culture. So for example, if you're a news organization, right, historically, the focus was on, I'll create the news that attracts the most people, the most eyeballs, because I'm ad driven. So my goal with my content is to attract eyeballs. In a subscription world, what you want to do is attract people who are willing to pay and keep them for a long time. It's a very different set of goals. That is not just a marketing problem. That is a product problem. You actually need different content and you need a different wrapper. The user experience, which is part of the offer of the subscription, needs to be thought through a little bit differently. So I think organizations that have dipped their toes in the world of subscriptions that, added a subscription element to enjoy that, some of the parts higher valuation or to solve a short-term problem or access some more predictable cash flow, it's time to start thinking about what does it mean for my product team, for my ops team, from my finance team about how the cash is, the revenue is recognized, from my tech team in terms of how they support it, from my analytics team in terms of how we track behavioral data. So it's a cultural transformation. It's not just a marketing thing that you just, put a subscription price on it and call it a day.
Oh my goodness, that hurts my head. We've got to think through all of this, and we need to help our teams translate all of this with perhaps new processes, with a lot of change, being a lot of, having a lot of flexibility in terms of our processes and teams. Nelson,
Yeah.
How does this all translate on the technology side?
God, I have so many examples to give you, but I want to be fair and give maybe a couple of them because it falls for different categories. Because we may have some audience members that are in the scale phase or entering scale phase, and some may be in the lead phase. So let me start with lead, because I kind of feel like we've maybe not covered that off enough. So I've got multiple customers that I'm speaking to right now that have reached that end of that honeymoon phase with some of their technology vendors. And what they've done is that they're now hitting the gas. They see the clouds breaking, and they want to be able to accelerate their business. So I have one customer in particular that is suffering through a vendor right now that is unable to handle their subsidiary model. That is, that they have to roll up their numbers, as Robbie was saying, individually and so forth. So how are they looking at it? They're now going to transition, or are looking to transition, to a technology that is going to allow them to operate agile at a subsidiary level and be able to understand their local business and all the revenues, but also have a situation where it all rolls up under one umbrella, so to speak. The corporation, if you will. I hate to call it a corporation, but the higher level entity is able to see all the numbers, and the lower level entity can also see their numbers, right? So how does that all mean? That means that they've got to migrate to an environment or a technology that allows for that sort of relationship, right? I know that sounds a little bit esoteric potentially, but that's exactly, Robbie, when you go from scale to lead, you're modernizing because you may be getting into different markets and so forth. So those are tough technology decisions. And that's where they normally go, should we go out and buy or should we build, right? And I could say right now that building is not a good idea, because you're going to end up in a situation like that forever and ever. Okay, so let's switch over to scale. It's one of my faves, although I love lead as well, right? So scale is one of my favorites because you'll see them there. They've been successful. They're now growing. They go, I have to get better, faster, smarter at everything I do, right? So what are the key building blocks or tech stack for that? Number one is that whatever you're using, and let's say you have a subscription platform that allows you not only to do the operational transacting of your members or subscriber business, that's table stakes. Can I glean information from that? What am I gaining out of that? What's my average ticket size? What is my growth rate? What's declining? What's not growing, and so forth, right? And then allow you to take action. So what do you need for that? Okay, great. So I want to be better, faster, smarter. What do I need? You need to be able to have a platform that, number one, allows you to take the data and derive insights. And then you want to have that data rendered in such a way where it provides insights that are actionable. If my sales are declining in this product, why? But if you don't have that data and those dashboards and that analytics, you don't know. And all you do is you end up with a result where my sales are down, right? So I think, again, being able to get data, render it in such a way to make it actionable. And you need technology stacks to do that. Platforms that allow for that kind of information sharing.
Mm-hmm. Really, really good point. So we've talked about launch, scale, lead phases. We've talked about staffing, operations, and tech. What do you think? I'll start with you, Robbie. What are some of the biggest factors? If you had to really, suggest one of the biggest factors that our audience needs to keep in mind as they navigate into post-pandemic, what's the biggest thing that you think would be?
I think that the most important thing is empathy. Put yourself into the shoes of your best member who you hopefully know who they are. As Nelson said, using data to really understand who they are and to say, what is changing for them right now? And how can I help them? I think about this, help them see around the corner, right? We anticipate that, now that you're going back to work, we anticipate now that you're eating out more, now that you're not chained to your desk. And so you're not spending as much time online. Here's how we've evolved the offering to stay relevant. The forever promise hasn't changed, but how we deliver on it is going to change. So I think that's the most important thing. And in some ways you can do that. One of them is, the hero shots on your wall. Put pictures up of your best members so that you're reminded of who you're building for and who you're designing for and who you're supporting. When you're creating an onboarding process or a billing experience, think about that person. Is this really, would they want to pay? Would I feel good about telling my neighbor to sign up for this if this is what they were going to get? But this is really a time for empathy because it's a time of unknown and a little bit of angst. And we were very agile in March and April of last year. It's time for that same level of agility. And I know a lot of us are exhausted. So it's hard to think like this. And I'm sure people are like, Robbie, we don't want to rethink our product and rethink our experience and relook at everything.
Just thinking that, because we've been going through and working and making it work. And then it's like, oh, we now need to be just as agile as when everything got shut down to prepare for coming out of the pandemic. Oh my goodness. I can hear everybody taking a deep breath, trying to.
Well, I was thinking, even you, Kathy, I mean, with Subscription Insider, right? You've had a year. We were talking about this before we launched the webinar, right? You've had a year where you went from, doing a lot of things in person to figuring out how to bring it all online and how to support your members and your partners, in this different world and kind of deal with the influx of all of these people trying to build subscription models. And a lot of it is digital. I know you've invested a lot in your digital systems and now you're like, well, I also have to do it live and digital. And people are dealing with different issues now. So I think it's facing, I'm dealing with it. Nelson, I'm sure you're dealing with it also, at Vindicia and, with your team. We're all trying to stay agile, but also feeling a little bit tired of so much change.
Yeah, I'm definitely tired, but I'm refreshed every day, honestly. I think that my organization and the organization that I'm part of has done an amazing job of remaining engaged internally, but also remaining engaged externally, and bringing that energy to the table. Guys, you know what? I'll throw this out there. Just another concept is I'm a fan because, look, I've been a purchaser of software and services, and as well as being a purveyor of them. I'll tell you the one thing that I think I would suggest everybody on this call does: challenge your vendors. And that sounds aggressive, like I'm challenging you. I'm not challenging you. I'm saying, give me some ideas. Look outside your four walls for ideas, strategies, just like we're doing here. Look, some of these might resonate with you. Some of them might not. But if somebody is a business partner of yours, I would suggest challenge them, saying, help me understand some other things that I could do to be smarter. Like, what are some of the best practices? Don't just provide me technology. Provide me technologies and some potential ways to leverage it to fully exploit the value of my investment. And I think that if you're being properly served, they will proactively bring ideas to you. But make yourself also available for those inputs. I'll give you an example. Forget about Vindicia for a second. When I was the COO of a software company, one of my favorite vendors was one that was actually initially pretty tactical. I'm not going to name their name out of respect for everybody. But one thing that I loved about this vendor was that they learned what my business challenges were, where I wanted to take it, because they asked me, right? And then they proactively would come to me. I know you didn't reach out about this, but let me share a couple of things that some of my other customers are doing that help them with a problem very similar to yours, or something that they're trying to achieve the same thing. I would say that's one of the things I think Vindicia does extremely well, is we don't want to just purvey you technology. We want to provide that catalyst to help you get there. So I would say challenge your vendors to be able to give you ideas so you can accelerate your business. Okay.
Great advice. We have some questions already in the chat window. If you have any other questions, please put that in there. I love this. Nick loves the suggestion of putting the pictures and quotes of subscribers who love your service up on the wall. I think that is a great suggestion. I mean, putting a picture and putting that personality so you can really internalize who your subscribers are and what their changes they're going to be going through, that empathy suggestion. Oh my goodness, Robbie, that is a fantastic suggestion. And I think we all know some people in the industry who go even further and have dolls or something physical representing their customers visiting in on meetings. So some people really do take it to the nth degree to really make sure their customer is represented as they're going through different meetings.
Yeah, I think you're talking about that, like Amazon's idea of the chair for the customer. So whenever you're having a meeting, you imagine that there's like you leave a chair empty for the customer. So you think, what if what we were saying and the way we were talking about our customer and our product, what if our customer heard that? Yeah. Would they say that's a company that I want to be a part of, or that's a company that's taking advantage of me, or doesn't care about my ongoing needs? And I just wanted to echo what Nelson said about go poke your vendors. A lot of times vendors see all of the other companies and what they're doing, how they're thinking about their tech stack, how they're managing their analytics, how fast they're growing, what they're spending. So even if you're not ready to invest, it's a good idea periodically, whatever phase you're in, to talk to vendors. And you can be upfront and say, look, I'm not planning to buy right away, but I do want to talk to you about where things are and what your thoughts are for me. I think, like Nelson said, many companies are happy to do that because it's about building the relationship and they're playing for the long term as well. And it gives you some really great insights so that when it's time to buy, you're not stressed and rushed and, meeting these people for the first time. You've actually gotten a chance to learn who provides value and what options are out there.
Yeah, I have one customer in particular that says to me on a regular basis, so what am I missing? What am I not thinking about?
Great. Open.
Is there anything else I'm not doing? Right?
Yep.
Yep. So we have that kind of relationship where I want to bring them insights, right? So make yourself available in that regard. I think it would pay a lot of dividends. Yeah.
So, Nelson, here's a question I think for you, which is dashboard and analytics. How should we be thinking about them coming out of the pandemic?
Yeah, well, first of all, you need them, right? And hopefully whatever platform you're using. So look, I know that payment processors provide some dashboarding to be able to give you an idea of the, how all that stuff is flowing through gateways and so forth. So, but on the subscription side, I think just to give you a couple of key things that a dashboard should give you, it should be giving you almost like a daily health check. So you could be able to see things like revenues, churn, things of that nature, month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year. I think where data becomes more actionable if it's a little bit more granular. Now, the concept of dashboards is you start with a high level and then you could drill down whatever insight you want to get to, right? So make sure that the data that is being rendered is both high level. Someone's like, oh, high blood pressure. Okay, what's the cause of it, right? Because it could be a whole bunch of things. Really bad example, not a doctor, obviously. But you get an idea, right? It's like, okay, I get an idea, macro level, but being able to drill down. So your dashboard should be able to provide you high-level display of the key metrics that represent the health of your business, and also be able to drill down to allow you to drill in to figure in what action you have to take and potentially what opportunities lie ahead.
Yep. Absolutely, totally agree. If you see me giggling here, we got some really fun questions asking us to prognosticate on location memberships. They're going to come back in popularity. I'll go on the record. I think they will once everybody gets comfortable with going out I don't know if anybody else wants to go out on a limb, but
yeah, I think so too. I think the physical location memberships are like, gyms, but also like Soho House or, some of these Wing and some of these clubs. I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who are building social clubs, professional clubs, physical gatherings. It's a lot like retail, where people said retail was going to die and people weren't going to shop in stores. And it's not that people aren't going to shop in stores. It's that they're going to want an experience that is different from and better than digital shopping, right? So, there's nothing more convenient than ordering from Amazon. But if I want to see it, touch it, feel it, I need to go into the store. If I want advice and expertise, I need to go in the store. So it's the same thing. If I want to bond in a human and personal way, I want to go to a place, but I want that place to be it has to be more comfortable than my house, right? It has to facilitate connection better than a Zoom call. So I think if organizations do that well, people will be out. We're all desperate for connection in the real world, I think.
I totally agree. Totally.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if my coworker's on, but I was having a laugh yesterday with one of my coworkers. What's more fun, a virtual wine tasting where you have a bottle and you're drinking it over Zoom,
drinking alone,
or in the company of people that are fun, right? I think it's pretty easy to say the latter, right? It's a lot more fun. I think without question. I think some of that's going to come back in a big way, but I think something that's new, flashy, and different will probably win the day.
So one last question here, just to address the culture changes. Robbie, I guess I'll throw that one to you, since you are such an expert on that. How should we really be thinking about the culture changes as we invest and scale our businesses?
It's really around a preference for customer centricity over the alternatives, which are, I think, product centricity and sales centricity. I think of product centricity. I'm in Silicon Valley, lots of product centricity, right? We love our engineers. We love the cool WYSIWYG things that, they build. But sometimes, it's just about the cup holders, right? It's about what the customer wants. And the person designing the race cars is like, I don't want to design a minivan, but people need minivans and they're willing to spend money for it. So you have to decide. And the same thing, I think sales oriented cultures, tend to be real believers in quarterly capitalism. Let's hit our number no matter how we have to do it. And let's not worry about next year. Let's just worry about this year. So, the number one thing, if you really want to enjoy high lifetime customer value, you have to optimize around long-term results, which can be painful sometimes when it means we're not going to love our product as much as we love our customer. We're not going to hit our quarterly number because we're investing in the long game. But that's really the way you have to think.
Yeah, that takes strong leadership to really understand and bring that throughout the company and upwards into your boardroom.
Well, that goes back to what we talked about earlier. What's your ultimate end state?
Yeah.
Even investors think that way, right? I don't really care about the first 2 quarters, even the first year. I'm thinking year 5, 6, 7, 8. That's where I'm going to, it depends. It depends on what your investment thesis is.
Yep.
Right?
Great piece of advice. Nick, long-term value and LTV.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Yeah.
So we're running out of time. So do you have any final advice for everybody on the call today? Robbie, I'll guess I'll put you on the hot seat first.
Yeah. I mean, beyond everything that we've talked about going forward, they always say, if you need shade, when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, 20 years ago, but the second best time is right now. The best time to focus on retention is when you're attracting new customers. But if you haven't done that, if you haven't been really investing in onboarding of new members, now's a good time to take a close look at that and to say, when somebody comes in, how do we make sure that they establish habits that give them the ongoing value they're entitled to and generate engagement and lead to loyalty?
Yeah. And I could piggyback on that. I would agree. If retention is a big deal to you, like I said, the analogy of the tree 20 years ago. Here's the good news: is that technology gives you closing speed. there is a way, there is technology, engagement platforms, elements to address active and passive churn, which I mentioned. You can retrofit your existing processes and systems today to improve your capabilities therein, right? So the good news is that you don't have to have worried about planting that tree. Culturally, yes, I would agree, 100%, right? But the good news is you can actually buy the tree adult size already, and we can wheel it in. At least from a technology perspective, right?
You with your gardener's hat.
Go to Home Depot, get the big one.
Well, honestly, that's great advice, Nelson. That's great advice, Robbie. I think we are running out of time, so I would like to thank both of you for this fantastic conversation.
It's been so much fun. It went by so fast. You're a great interviewer, and it's always fun to banter with Nelson too. This is wonderful. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, we'll have to do it again sometime. And I really thank you both. And I'd like to thank all of you attending today. We know your time is valuable, and I hope you took great value, as I did, in all this conversation today. We will be sending out a replay, so look for an email from me later today with a link to the on-demand replay, so you can get some of that advice in replay so you can really understand it. So with that, thank you all for your time today. Nelson and Robbie, thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good one.